Hello class, this is the first of two videos for the week, in week 6, as we are beginning the start of a brand new assignment, the Discourse Community Analysis. By the time you read this, or by the time many of you view this, I will probably be grading the literacy narrative, and hopefully you will have that by Tuesday night of week 6, those graded drafts. But like I said, a lot of our concentration for this week is going to be on the Discourse Community Analysis. Okay? You will be reading Ann Johns' article on discourse communities. This is a seminal piece about what a discourse community is, and this includes John Swales' identifying factors of what makes a discourse community. This is one of the more dense and complicated readings that we have done this semester. Therefore, I'm going to ask you to write a summary for your journal entry this week. Okay? Your reading is also going to play into the one-pager, as I am asking you to begin considering which discourse community you are a member of to write the analysis about. So for this week, by the end of the week, you should have a list of 3 potential spaces so I can begin dialogues with each of you, because I want to be able to talk to each of you about what your potential discourse community is. So that's going to be really important because, we have the same 5 weeks that we do for the literacy narrative, but with this essay there is a bit more of a learning curve, because before you even start writing the paper, you have to understand what a discourse community actually is. Before you get to that reading, though, there is another reading that you're doing that is entitled Official American English is Best, and some of the notes as written by the author are as follows. So one of the things that Alvarez does is that he begins by discussing the debate surrounding English as potentially being the official language of the United States, and this is something that is often debated and discussed about. Okay, the implicit attitude of this movement is that immigrants do not want to learn English. Okay? Something else that Alvarez does is that he reviews the history of English-only movements. And so what else Alvarez does is that immigrants in fact learn English at a faster rate than any point in history. So this is something that he goes out of his way to point out, to be specific about just the way that immigrants learn English, because I think one of the stereotypes that often gets attached to immigrants is that either they don't know English or that they don't want to learn English. But in fact, as the statistics bear out, they are learning English at a faster rate currently than at any point in history. The final note that I have is that schools ultimately bear the responsibility for building better citizens, and that language hybridity has existed and will continue to exist despite potential pushes for English-only education. Okay, so for the 6th discussion board, again, you've got to make sure that you complete Official American English is Best by Stephen Alvarez in your textbook. Alvarez discusses the myths surrounding English-only practices. He reviews some of the history and concludes by discussing the value of knowing multiple languages and accepting many varieties of communities of practice. Okay, so in a post of about 200 to 250 words, discuss whether you agree with the author's overall point, and provide an example or two of statements he makes and why you agree or disagree. In addition, please discuss some of the benefits of knowing multiple languages for you personally as you consider a professional career. Please complete an initial post by Tuesday, February the 23rd at 10 p.m., and then make sure you complete your 2 response posts by Sunday, February the 28th at 10 p.m. as well. So this discussion board is addressing one of the shorter readings that we are doing this week as we think about the way that English is being used and the way that we think about this form of standard English again. You've kind of started looking at this last week when we thought about African American English. This time you're reading something kind of in the same vein, but also a little bit different. So, like I said, the reading that you are doing is very complicated and it's very difficult. And the way that John starts off is by listing the 6 defining characteristics of a discourse community. First and foremost, it has a broadly agreed set of common public goals. It has mechanisms of intercommunication among its members, such as newsletters or journals. It utilizes and hence possesses one or more genres in the communicative furtherance of its aims. It uses its participatory mechanisms primarily to provide information and feedback. Okay? In addition to owning genres, it has acquired some specific lexes. Okay, and it has a threshold level of members with a suitable degree of relevant content and discoursal expertise. Okay, so it's probably going to take you kind of a couple times looking through this assignment sheet and looking through this paper to really understand kind of these six characteristics. But in a specific way, discourse communities have kind of a broad definition, but you can definitely narrow it down. It has a broadly agreed set of common public goals. So what are they trying to do? So an example of that can be like for our class, the goals that we have for this class can be considered a part of a discourse community. Okay? Methods of intercommunication, that can be a newsletter, that can be email chains, that can be Slack channels, that can be text chains. Okay? There are many different ways that people can communicate with each other. Okay? And when we talk about genres, I think one of the more interesting and powerful genres is an example of a menu. That is a big mode of communication in any restaurant discourse community. Okay, so you need to make sure that you have an understanding of what a genre is. And again, this is not something that I'm expecting you to immediately understand after this first week, but it is certainly something that by the end of this process, by the end of this 5 weeks, that is something that I hope you are able to identify and figure out. Okay? It uses its participatory mechanisms to provide information and feedback. So the ways that you can give feedback, a lot of discourse communities have that way. Lexes, I think people often get this word confused with the word jargon, but essentially lexes are anything or any specific words that a discourse community uses. Okay, and a threshold level of members. I mean, there is no set amount of members that a particular discourse community has. Okay, but it does have to have enough knowledge contained within those individuals so that they understand what they are dealing with and how they're forwarding the first 5. So in order for a discourse community to be a discourse community, it must have all 6 of these characteristics. It can't have 4, can't have 5, it must have all 6. Okay? Thus, communities of practice are seen as complex collections of individuals who share genres, language, values, concepts, and ways of being often distinct from those held by other communities. People are born or taken involuntarily by their families and cultures into some communities of practice. These first culture communities may be religious, tribal, social, or economic. Individuals often affiliate with several communities at the same time, with varying levels of involvement and interest. People may join a group because they agree politically, because they want to socialize, or because they are interested in a particular sport or pastime. The depth of an individual's commitment can and often does change over time. So when we're first born, we are unwittingly put into a number of discourse communities that can include religious institutions as well as these other places. Okay? And family as well. We don't get to choose our family in some unfortunate ways, but our involvement with these various communities can change over time. People can join communities at will and remain affiliated at levels of their own choosing. For a number of reasons, this is not entirely accurate. Okay, in some cases, people are excluded from communities because they lack social standing, talent, or money, or because they live in the wrong part of town. Okay, they often must drop or at least diminish in importance their affiliations to their home cultures in order to take on the values, language, and genres of their disciplinary culture. Journal number 6. Over the 6th journal entry, you will first need to read Discourse, Communities, and Communities of Practice, Membership, Conflict, and Diversity. So, as I mentioned before, this is the most dense and complicated reading you've completed up to this point. Therefore, I'm keeping this journal entry relatively straightforward. I want you to write a 3/4 to 1-page summary of this reading. Remember that in a summary, you are to focus only on what the author is saying and not to include your opinion. This especially means avoiding the use of the first person. Focus on the main ideas of the entire essay. And make sure that you post this journal entry into the Dropbox by Thursday, February the 25th at 10 p.m. Okay, so I know that this is a very dense and complicated reading, but the most important thing that you can do is to work through it, process it the best you can, and to write a straightforward summary of it. And for the 1-pager this week, you will first need to read Discourse, Communities, and Communities of Practice, Membership, Conflict, and Diversity, and the assignment sheet for the Discourse Community essay. For the 1-pager, I'm asking you to generate 3 ideas for a possible Discourse Community essay. Each site should have a full paragraph written about it. You should explain the purpose of the site and explain how it is a discourse community. You should also evaluate your discourse community against Swale's 6 defining characteristics. Essentially, you are justifying why you should get to write about a particular place, and you should identify which site is your preferred choice. Remember, an early draft of this assignment is going to be due next week, so you need to have your proposal, and you need to identify the 3 places, and you need to tell me which is your preferred site. Okay? Because the reason I'm having you list 3 is so that potentially, if one of them doesn't work out or if I don't approve it, there are 2 other options. Okay? So you are picking your own discourse community, and this is something that I talk much more about in the other video this week. So if you've not done so, make sure that you go watch the video for this week as it concerns discourse communities. Okay? And this 1-pager should be posted onto this Dropbox by Sunday, February the 28th at 10 p.m. So the last day of February, make sure that this is turned in. Okay? Again, like I said, make sure you go and watch the video where I discuss the discourse communities, the assignment itself, and be sure to ask questions because this is the most difficult assignment of the semester. Okay? Thanks a lot and have a good week.